SpeakuP Monday here at Tropical Nomad, our collaboration partner, Itchy, Bella, Guzman, the whole crew. Special thanks to them for doing this every week and making this thing sing, right? And obviously, you know, we have an amazing guest this week, my brother David.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Happy to be here.
Man, from Yogi Lab. And I'm looking forward to this for different reasons. As the in-studio audience, of which there are many, can attest to, there's a great vibe already here. And I haven't even met him. I've met him like 5 minutes ago, right? Incredible. And this is the beauty about SpeakuP Monday. There's two themes that run through everything we do. One is that people inspire people. So people inspire people. And the other one is we're here in Bali, in Indonesia, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which is unity in diversity. So unity in diversity. And every week we seem to reach this path where those two things ricochet and vibrate and radiate from what's created here.
And I just love that as a foundational principle, because it's something we talk about a lot as a crew, like Yogi Lab, and you're asking about that thing, is that we encourage disagreement. And I feel like you need to encourage disagreement if you want to grow, you want to meet different people. Because when I was younger, I don't know about you, I thought someone had to be the same as me for me to like them, right? Have the same qualities, be interested in the same things. Whereas now, it's the opposite. I want someone to be 100% themselves, and I can be 100% myself, and we can learn to love each other from that stance. Not needing you to morph into me or me into you like I'm your dog owner. You know, where you slowly start to see the dog change to become the owner. And so I feel like disagreement's a beautiful thing. It doesn't need to create friction. It can help produce togetherness, actually.
Love it, love it. And you know, one of the things I mentioned to the guys here that we had Brian, one of your compadres from Yogi Lab on.
We still have him. He's right there.
He's sitting right there. And then we have Aaron, but I like to call him Aaron, next week. So we've got like this trifecta happening. And I love you guys because, you know, like you all of you, right, have got this heartbeat and this pulse, you know, which I just am so drawn to. And within seconds, I feel like I can trust you. In seconds, I feel like we can go there, right? Go to the depths of what it is to be human, and those experiences that make us vulnerable and open, and those experiences that people can draw from, right? That can draw real value from to use in their lives in a way that would take themselves forward as well, right? So I just want to put that to you before you even start, even though we started.
No, likewise, and I felt that from you straight away. Yeah. When I saw you there from a distance, it was like I didn't feel that on camera when I saw you with Brian before. Yeah. I thought this is a wonderful conversation. I watched that at home, and I watched the interview and everything. I thought it's great, listening to both of you talk. But I didn't feel that thing, that London vibe. Yeah. And as soon as I saw you there, it was like I could feel that connection. I knew we'd just be able to connect straight away.
Love it, man. Love it. And so today, obviously, for those of you who don't know, this is David from Yogi Lab, an 8-figure business and just an incredible human. And I mean, how do you make 8 figures from meditation? We'll go there tonight.
No, we didn't make 8 figures with Yogi Lab. I made 8 figures before. So the meditation, most of the meditation stuff we do right now, we give away for free. Like the Vipassanas that are signing up, that's 100% for free. People donate if they like it at the end, and we just put that back into marketing and hosting the platform. So like 100% our promise to whoever meditates with us, that just goes back into the system.
Love it. And so where did this all start for you, man? Like I get a feeling, having spoken to you for a little bit, right? Because where I grew up in 2 children's homes in London from 6 months to the age of 18. I ran with rude boys. I ran with boys who were doing the wrong thing a lot, right? Somehow I managed to avoid going to prison, but that wasn't because it wasn't because I was doing things that were not prison worthy, because I was, right? I was, right? But I was luckily enough, fortunate enough to be a bit protected, a bit naive, and I just didn't get caught, right? So for those of you watching there, the police back in the days where I grew up, I'm sorry. Sorry you didn't catch me. So then something like meditation, so like for me, meditation was such a huge part of my life because it allowed me to to really get clear on who I was being, and all the things that I liked, didn't like, the things that I wanted to be, the things that I definitely didn't want to be, and it just came from this place of understanding and purity, of just slowing things down to be one and at peace with all things, which I reached on a few occasions, right? So when I ask you, you know, like where did this whole thing start, I would love to know, you know, like where it really started for you, man.
Well, there's a lot of ways that you can answer that question, right? And that it will be true. And it's a difficult one. I feel like that thing that people say that you can make this heaven or hell is really true. And let's say the first 14 years of my life were hell. Like I was in pain the whole time. And I always throw out that Einstein quote, which is something that Landra gave me, another London girl, by the way. If any way she's watching this, haven't seen her for about 15 years, Landra, love you. But it was this Einstein quote that she gave me on a birthday card once when we were at university. And he was asked to explain relativity to the layperson. And he said, spend 2 minutes with your hand on a hot stove and it'll feel like 2 hours. Spend 2 hours with a beautiful woman and it'll feel like 2 minutes. That's relativity. Or a beautiful man if you're inclined the other way. But for me, a beautiful woman. And I feel like those first 14 years just compressed experience into me. And now I look back at it and I think it's the best thing that could have happened to me. Because I tell you right now, I would have not taken meditation so seriously, self-growth so seriously, if me and my family were not in the pits of hell. Because it was basically like, am I going to give in to this and let this environment overwhelm me, or am I going to become something different that I can survive and thrive through this? And for me, it actually wasn't enough, I'll be honest. I didn't have the self-esteem, the confidence, the soft skills that you need to grow into someone successful back then. But I had one thing, and that was the love for my family. I could not stand to see us living like that and in such pain, and that just pushed me towards this urge for growth. You know, closer towards the truth. Because I know if you get closer towards the truth, how can you get further away from power? Right? So if I move closer towards the truth, I've got to become better. And then I can finally act on this love instead of have it dampened by my environment.
Got it, brother. Got it. And look, even though, well, what the heck is you, man? Give me some of those experiences that were hell. I'd love to know what they were. Whatever comes to your mind, what you feel like sharing.
All right. These boys in particular that you've been mentioning have heard me talk a lot, so I'll say something different so they don't have to hear the same thing again and again. But like, I don't usually say this on camera and we talk about it because it involves other people's experience, but I think my mother and my father wouldn't mind me talking about this, is they were both Christian cult members. My mother's from a Sikh background with Hindus in her family. My dad's from a Jewish background, but he was a secular Jew because my granddad left the faith, right? And they both left and they became Christians for a separate reason. And they wanted that free-loving hippie lifestyle, but they joined that really dark Christian cult, the Children of God, the family, where there ended up being a lot of abuse and everything like that. So my mom, bless her soul, has 4 kids. And when she tried to leave the cult, she was reported that she wanted to leave and complain against it. And they put her on watch for a year. So she was never able to spend time alone with any more than one of us at a time. So, and my mom is like the softest human being you could meet if you saw her in here. But for that year, she was a soldier. She realized what she had to do to get her kids out of there. And she played the good soldier for 1 year until she said, you know, I think I'm feeling a calling from God telling me that I should go back to London and preach the word there. So they let her out of the clutches of the cult and she ran away with her 4 babies and she didn't look back. Wow. And so we had to go through some dark things in those early years that resonated with us as well. And you think my mom came back to a success story? She came back to London and her traditional Sikh father, when they saw her with half-white babies, he crossed the road. And her mother, with tears in her eyes, crossed the road too. And later she reached out to my mom and tried to bridge the gap. But my mom came back to be left alone as someone who'd been living out of society for like 7 years, because she was only 23 when she came back with 4 kids. Wow. She left home when she was 16. And so I say she's soft, but she's been through some stuff that most people would not make it through, you know? And so she came back and knew that she had to do it herself. And she put herself on her own 2 feet, and she worked 4 jobs sometimes whilst putting herself through university at the same time. So if you want to talk about some of the hell we grew through, that's some of that. And one of the reasons why we grew through it was just because of the love and hard work of my mother.
What a woman.
Love you, Mom.
Yeah. And you know, like that thing about, you know, the softness, as you mentioned before, you know, there's a film called June.
Oh, yeah.
Love
that movie.
I knew you could relate. And the thing about that movie, an old-time movie, for those of you who know it, you're old.
And I think it's a great version of the novel. You know what, David Lynch or whatever gets like a lot of scoff for that, but I think it's wonderful. Me and my brother watched that and watched Muad'Dib, and we're like, yo, that's a warrior monk. Yeah. You know, and that's what we wanted to be as we grew up. That's where the hairstyle comes from, I was old.
I had no idea about this. It cracks me up how synchronicity works.
Because like, one of the ladies here was asking about Vipassana beforehand and how I got into Vipassana. To me, Vipassana is just the primary human skill. And you know that because once you learn it, you look back through the history of art and the history of the world, and you see people using it in different ways. Nothing to do with the Buddha, nothing to do with being taught by a meditation teacher. And Dune has one of the best representations of Vipassana in fiction I've seen.
Wow.
You know what it is? It's the moment before Muad'Dib knows he's the hero of the story, Paul Atreides, before he knows the hero of the story. And he's being tested by his mother's teacher, who's the head of the witches. Yeah. And she tests him by seeing whether he's a human or an animal. And the test is this. You got to put your hand in this box. And he does it. And then she puts a thimble to his neck. And she tells him the choice is this. This box is going to make you feel every kind of pain you can feel, but it can't harm you. But this thimble has poison on it that's going to kill you in a second. You're going to die peacefully, you're going to die painlessly, it's not going to affect you. But if you pull your hand out of the box, I'm pricking you with this thing and you're dead. So are you human or are you an animal? Wow. And he has to sit there and decide whether he can feel that pain and choose to live, or if he's going to give into it and die. Wow. That's Vipassana.
What a description, you know. So the reason why it came up for me, apart from that one, which I now get, I love this thing about just the energy just takes you wherever you need to go. There's no plan, there's no agenda, it just takes you wherever you need to go. And every interview is different by that. So when you said the other week about Brian not feeling the London in me, we were reflecting each other, and what was created was a like, okay, 1 + 1 = 2. I told this to the guys before. So 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 = 11, or 1 + 1 = a window, right? So for you, those of you who are scratching your head thinking like 1 + 1 = a window, what is he talking about? I'll show you what I mean. Got it? So 1 + 1 is a window, and that window is what's created is something of, it's limitless. It's a window of opportunity, a window of possibility. Right, that's what's created. So every interview works its own magic based upon the energy that's present then. And what I do is that I allow that, so I don't block it, I just go with it, which is actually exactly about your mum in June, right? So soft. So the part in June that was triggered was that I will bend like a reed in the wind. Mm-hmm. And that was the way that he defeated him. And your mum, even though the reed is soft, right? But soft is strong.
100%.
Right, because then she was able to bend with all of it.
Well, it's unbreakable.
Absorb, yeah.
Right. I call that the second strength. I remember learning that when I was 21. Yeah. You know, and I needed the first strength first, which is willpower, because without willpower, you're not even in the game, right? You can't choose what to do. But the second strength is the greater strength, because it's acceptance. And if you can accept anything, if you can welcome any experience, then you're unbreakable. It's like whatever comes my way, if I can accept it, then what can defeat me? Right? Got it. And then you're just willing to be yourself. Yeah. Because whatever you get from being yourself is real world feedback, and you've already framed that can't be negative, because you've said, give it to me.
And where did your mum, so do you know her background? Like her parents, can you tell us a little bit about that? I'm fascinated by her.
What do you want to know?
Okay, so what was her childhood like?
My mom's the baby. You know, she's the youngest of 4 as well, and she's just a soft little baby, and she's still a soft little baby now. You know, she hasn't changed, except for she's got some of that spiritual wisdom and the experience of that grit of what took her through all of it. But she's got the energy of being that baby. You know, when you meet people and it's just like, oh, you're just like a little baby, you just want to be loved. That's what my mom's like. And so she was raised like that. But my mother, like, both my grandfathers and a lot of my great uncles were all in the army in the Second World War from different sides, from the American Jewish side and from the Indian side. And so my Indian grandparents moved to London after that. And so my mother was raised as like a brown girl in London back in the day, maybe a generation before you know? And so you know what it was like back then. So my mother had this slight identity crisis of like she's playing with a lot of the other kids and she's the only brown girl in the group. And so she had a choice to close herself off into the set community that the Indian community was back then, or to be able to engage and broaden herself and connect with everyone. And that comes with a lot of discrimination and violence sometimes, and you have to be willing to stare down people's negative reflections of you and not give in to them, right? So again, like I said, my mom's soft, but it doesn't mean she doesn't have strength. She had these character building things that helped her to grow. And so once she realized that she wasn't what people were telling her she was, then she started to be able to make choices for herself and what she wanted to do. And those choices did lead her towards getting into a cult, but that was her drive towards wanting to find genuine spirituality and freedom and a better way of life. And eventually that is what she built for us.
And the last question on your mum. So where did her strength come from? I know she's soft, but like she was able to withstand so much, man. Like,
brother, I think that's exactly the same answer I gave about me when you said where did it all start. It's just got to be love, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's the same thing, and it's not self-love. I think that comes after, actually. I feel like, man, I love what you just said about the wands and the window, because you know what that is without you even knowing it. Same thing I said about the passion that's present everywhere. That's the first rule of improvisation. I went to drama school when I was a kid, and the first rule of improvisation is always say yes. It's the opposite to the drug rule, right? Such a dampening rule, like always say yes, just say yes. And that's the first rule of improvisation, because it's the key to adventure. If I invite you to go on this magical journey to slay this dragon and get the pot of gold and save the village, and you're like, no, I'm good, I'm just going to plow this field, then we got no Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, right? That's the end of the story. You got to go on that journey to be able to face those demons down, to be able to make it through the story and save the villagers. So first rule of improvisation, always say yes. And with that, I think love is another window. Because if I truly love you, it's completely separate from me. It's not this transactional thing. I don't love you because I don't love you in relation. I love you separate. I care about you as a thing. And so how I learned that first was with my mother and my older sister. Because, my mom, like, obviously such pain there, but my older sister too. I won't talk about it too much because her story's more private, but my sister went through a lot, and she bore the brunt of a lot of what we went through as kids. And so when I started to grow up and realize that, then I wanted to be there for her, right? And so that love helped me to see from outside of myself, because I cared about her completely separate from me. I just cared about her as a thing, as a being. And so that love helped me to be able to see from two positions. One from inside myself, from my ego and my filters, and two from outside of myself through the lens of love, which is completely separate from the lens of the self. And so to me, that's another invitation to say yes to life. And I think my mother, seeing her babies threatened by this cult and these other people, was just like, no, that ain't happening. And I think she chose to act through love, not self-concern. And so it's the same thing. I think that's what got us out.
What a woman. Mamma mia. So, brother, man, getting back to your journey, right? So you grew up this way, unusually, much like myself, unusually. And so we spoke a little bit before about the business that made this possible. So I have no idea what that business was. Like, can you tell us what the business was and how you came to it?
Have you read the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse?
No, I haven't.
Anyone here read that? Siddhartha, wonderful book, and my life is a lot like that, actually. And I read it after I'd been through a lot of those cycles, so it was interesting to see it. Like, even to the point when I came back from living like a monk, the first thing I did was starting to gamble. Because to take a phrase from Mike Tyson, I just wanted to get the stench of the world back on me. I felt like I'd cleaned myself, and I just wanted to immerse myself in the mud and see, like, can I still hold this position of peace and love even though I'm in the world and I'm not keeping myself distant or aloof or just focusing my attention on myself? When actually the monastic path is a beautiful one, because the deeper you go into practice and love, the more it does connect you to others. And you are doing a world service by cleaning that line, but on the practical base level, you're disconnected, right? And for me, it wasn't any of the businesses. Like, I could have made the money through that. I could have made the money through signing an oil deal with the Indian government that somehow just landed in my lap. I could have made the money through property development, because all that pain that I'd carried as a youngster was washed away when I spent 3 years in deep meditation. And I just spent this 3 years going through these states of dissolution, washing everything out of me and seeing it again and re-experiencing it. So like my hand in that box in Dune, and I had the Gom Jabbar to my neck, and I was willing to see it all again to the point where I loved the pain. And I'd had that concept before when I was 18. I thought, that's got to be the answer, right? Because if you're only gravitating towards all the bliss in life, that's like a tiny percentage of life and all the real good stuff. So that's just making you a sugar addict, gravitating towards that. Whereas if you want to love the whole of life, eventually you've got to face that pain. If you don't love the pain and you don't find joy and like benefit in it, then you don't love life. You know, you love a slice. You love an ingredient that's in the cake, but you don't love the whole cake. And I realized it was the answer because much younger than that, when I was 14, like I said, I realized that pain had a lot to teach me. And I realized even then, my worst experiences end up being my best teachers. So bad experiences aren't negative. But then I thought, what's the next step? The next step is not just looking back and knowing it did something good for me. The next step is, I'm in the situation, already loving it. Can I love this in the present, not just retrospectively? Not just like Nietzsche with the eternal recurrence, where you look back and say, yeah, it was good to me, so give it to me. But in this moment, while I'm still going through the tears and the blood and the sweat, can I still say yes to life? And so, to me, that was like a big guiding principle. And Vipassana is the thing that gave me the skill to be able to actually do that, not just intellectualize about it. And then when I came back, I met a different world. Not only had I changed, the way the world responded to me had changed. Because I know you know about this too, right? But when I was younger, I carried a darkness. And that darkness carried me through a lot because I was in a dark life. And at some point, I needed to be able to say, right, I can face this darkness and I'm not going to get taken down. And so there was a certain attitude and energy I carried with me that's helped me to survive that life. But then afterwards, you realize, I've got this shadow on me. And either I walk around with this shadow my whole life or I do something to get rid of it. And I did something to get rid of it. And then when I came back, all those good things that could not get to me before could now suddenly get to me. I didn't meet the mythical beast that you are, Rob, back then, the hood dude that could guide me through it that I was looking for. But then after that, everyone I met was trying to help me. People just coming, giving me opportunities, giving me everything like that. And I didn't think of myself as a business person. I still don't think of myself as a business person. There's just a phase and a game I'm playing to be able to learn certain skills. It's a beautiful phase and I love it. But I didn't frame myself in that light. And so when I came back, all these opportunities started coming at me and I just turned them down because I was like, no, I'm not a business person. But then later I realized that is what I am right now. The director has cast me and I'm saying no to my lines. Did I forget my training in drama school? You know what I mean? I've got to remember the first law of improvisation and bring that back in.
Oh man, what's dropping in for me is just let the light in. You gotta let the light in, because as you said, that darkness is there for, and it helped me big time get through things that were incredibly difficult for me at the time. But that darkness kept me, it kept me there, You
know that Wendell Berry poem? Like there's a guy who lives here in Bali, actually, Jeremiah Abrams, who edited a wonderful book called Meeting the Shadow.
I know the book.
You know the book, yeah. And it's like edited by Connie Sweet, Jeremiah Abrams. It's got like 50 to 100 essays from Jungian analysts and poets and everything like that. They finish it with a poem from Wendell Berry that, I hope I don't butcher this, sorry Wendell if I destroy this, if you're still alive. But it goes, to go into the dark with the light is to know the light. If you want to know the dark, then go dark, and know that darkness too dances and sings on dark feet and dark wings. And if you're in the darkness, at some point, if you haven't got that light inside of you and you don't know how to find it, or even if you do, then you've got to integrate the darkness too. And then that's the way that you can come back out of it and work through it. And then you're never threatened by the darkness, because to go back to it isn't a nightmare anymore. You've learned how to live in it.
No, I mean is a term, if you're from London, you'll get it. Even if you're not, you'll understand what it means, but you probably won't say it. Maybe now you will. No, I mean. Man. Wow. Brother, man.
Should we just end this here and go have dinner with these lovely people?
Feels like that, doesn't it? Wow. So this thing about, the light and dark. So a while ago, I got to see that it's the different sides to the same coin. Actually, it's all energy, and it's just our projections that name it as light and dark. And one of my first clearing sessions with it was to do with sub-personalities. This understanding that within us all we have all these different personalities: the loser, the winner, the risk taker, the punk, the guy from London, the hustler. We all have these different parts of us, and it's a bit like each one of them is like a helium-filled balloon, right? And basically, what we're trying to do. This is like the sieve which is holding down all of these balloons. In other words, the hole isn't big enough for these balloons to escape. And then what escapes becomes our personality. These become the dominant sub-personalities that we then call us, our personality. And what I realized was that if you remove that sieve and put your hands and your arms and your feet there, helium-filled balloons, you're trying to keep down all of this shit that you don't want the world to see. And the only things you want to let out are the things that you believe to be good. That people look at you and say, oh, he's a nice guy, or he's a good guy, he's good at business, he's a good basketball player, that guy's a dude, that guy's not, right? So all of this. But the problem is that each time you're holding something down, and as they begin to rise, you're using more of your body to hold them down. Each one...
So you're giving up pieces of yourself.
Absolutely. And it's the energy which you're using to hold these guys down, which is actually reducing the energy coming back to you. So you feel tired. So I was a nightclub guy. 16,644 numbers in my phone at the age of 23, right? I ended up doing 2,000 plus events, 1.5 million people that I personally met and greeted and saw, right? Loved it. For each person that I remember, I was being somebody else because I wasn't clear or comfortable with who I was. I was ashamed of myself. So to that guy, I'll be the cool guy. To that guy, I'll be the deep guy. To that guy, I'll be to that guy, I'll be the hustler. So what I was doing is I was holding down all these sub-personalities that I didn't want people to see. The work that I did was letting go. The minute that I began to let this shit go and say, you know what, I don't give a, pardon the French, I don't give a fuck either way. I'm letting this stuff go because it's killing me. So as these balloons rise up of the ones that I wanted to hold down, which I call dark energy or dark emotions, then all of the energy that I used to hold them down then came back to me. So as a result of that breakthrough, then the energy was like, whoa, and then that's where the second part of my life began. So when I describe that, what comes up for you in your mind?
You heard of Carlos Castaneda before? Yeah, you know, he wrote those bunch of books about studying under Don Juan and people think they're fake and whatever and all of that. But the narrative within it and the growth process within it is true. And I know because I've been through the same process myself. And one of the things he talks about, the subject of the 8th book, The Power of Silence, which is a wonderful book, is what his teacher Don Juan calls the abstract cores. And the abstract core is the skeleton and the structure behind a story, behind a narrative. And obviously, when we talk about narrative, we're talking about the narrative of our lives. And so you might be talking about the skin of a story, right? That's your version of it, the phenomenon you've experienced. But it comes to a point in the skeleton. And I know that point in the skeleton. So when you talk about that, I see my skin of that story. And I know when I let the shadow come up as well. I know when I let the sub-personalities rise to the surface. And so I see that moment. I see myself again when I was 21. And I was willing to stop being as shiny or handsome or capable in certain ways or nice to people to be what I really was, which in some ways was not very nice, you know, and I had to accept that and let that come to the surface before I could grow into anything else. Because otherwise, what was I? I was an aged 21-year-old. I was old and I was tired and I was cynical at 21 because I was using all my energy and holding these personalities down. Whereas when I took the hands off, when I took the feet off and I let the balloon starting to come up, less poetically, I used to look at this exercise as bringing my sub-personalities to the table. Like I'm sitting at the head, right? Because I'm the one running this show that's holding all these other things down. But then I'd open an invitation to the rest of them and I'd put seats at the table and see, okay, today who wants to come and talk to me? Which version of me wants to come and sit at this table and communicate with me? And Hugh Prada, in his book, I Touch the Earth Touches Me, said something wonderful. Because when I was 21, I was in South Korea. I just left London to go and live there. And that's when I was doing my shadow work and going through all of this, right? And I read this wonderful book by Hugh Prada. And he said, what if all the worst pieces of myself are just the things that I've left undeveloped? What if my deviousness and my cunningness that I hate so much could grow into some kind of trickster genius if I nourished it? And so I created this exercise to bring people to the table because I thought, yeah, of course, the piece of myself that I've locked up, you know, what happens when you lock something up for then 21 years? If you lock someone in the basement for 21 years and you just give them enough to survive, they're not going to come out quoting Shakespeare to you. They're going to come out drooling and looking horrible and disheveled because that's what you made out of them. And so I thought, these things that I've got underneath the surface, don't expect them to be beautiful. Don't expect other people to love them, because if I can't love them, how can I expect another person to? So don't give up just because you're not getting back positive feedback, right? Let this piece of you come out, nourish it, love it, and then see what happens to it.
And lovely. I could talk to you for hours, man. So for maybe let's relate to other people now. So it's, so if there's somebody there, right, they're on their journey, right, and they understand that, hey, love is, I've heard that love is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. I don't love myself. I don't love many things, actually, right? I'm in a low point. Now, this can be, and this is one of the beautiful things that life taught me too, was that, no matter how somebody looks on the outside, you have no idea what's going on the inside, right? So they may look good, smell good, but they're contemplating suicide, or they're contemplating hurting themselves in some way, shape, or form. So we can't rely upon what we see, or what a person presents, which sub-personality, I can tell you now, which sub-personalities, or a bunch of them, a person presents to us. We can't really say, well, this is who they are. There might be something else below that. So this thing about love, what could you advise somebody who's in that position of not loving themselves, not loving other people, but realizing that this is important for me? How can they find their way to it?
Well, I think the first thing is to let them know that it's not unusual. Actually, I think that's the common situation, to not love. I think to love is exceptional, and that's why it's beautiful every chance we're given to do it, to be able to do it, right? Because it's not the norm, it's the exception. Simone Weil, the philosopher from around the Second World War, Jewish philosopher, she said there's two forces in the universe, there's gravity and grace. To me, to not love is gravity. That's just following the laws of the universe. Every time you do love, it's grace. There's something beautiful, something new you've brought into the world. So one, don't be hard on yourself. That's just the way it is. That's the way things start. Two, from the Buddha, I just want them to know there is a way. That's the fourth noble truth, which seems like nothing. The four noble truths are: life is suffering, there is a cause to suffering, there is an end to suffering, and there is a way to that end to suffering. But when you actually realize the truth behind those things, that's a very powerful thing when you realize, oh, there is a way. There is a way that works. And why you're a mythical beast is that to us, when we're younger, when we're in the hood, you're the way. Right? That's why Jesus was the way and the truth, right? I am the truth and I am the way, because he's an example of how to get out of the darkness. And so all I'd say to people is this: you might not be able to see it now, you might not know it, but there is a way out of that. And people have found it, and you can find it too. Third, for an action step, because you always want to make it practical, right? Start nourishing yourself. Don't start with the big things. These things like you needing to be some developed philosopher person that you have an image of yourself in your mind, or a deeply loving person that's caring about everyone around you and these goals that you have. Just start by nourishing yourself. Look after the organism. How can you expect an unhealthy organism to produce healthy responses to the world? So love yourself in a very practical sense. Give yourself food, give yourself water, give yourself what you need to live. Exercise the body, exercise the mind. Start to stretch yourself, and slowly healthier impulses and responses will come through the care that you've put into the self.
Love it. And so many things come up for me, man. Wow. The one thread that I'll follow is, Lisa Nichols?
I know the name, but I can't think of who she is right now.
Yeah, so Lisa Nichols is like a female version of Les Brown, right? Everyone here know who Les Brown is? Yeah, a few hands. Les Brown is an incredible, he calls himself a motivational, I call him an inspirational speaker, right? From the old days, man, this guy's like a preacher, right? You let us talk about Christians before, it's like this guy's born again many times. And such an incredible, infectious, powerful energy this guy has, right? And Lisa Nichols is one of those. I call her the female form, the female version. So one of these things that I love about what she can give people is this practice in the morning where, so you look, after you brush your teeth, right, you look at yourself in the mirror and you adopt the superwoman if you're a woman, or the superman if you're a man pose. So if you don't know what that is, I'll do it real quickly, then I'll sit down. Yeah, you got it, David. It's this. Right? We all know this one, right? There you go. Okay. So this is a very powerful position for many different reasons I can't even explain, but I know you could. And so what you do is you look at yourself in the mirror and you talk to yourself. And there's three things you say. So the first one is your name first, like my name's Rob. So Rob, I'm proud of you for. And I say something that I'm proud of. Maybe, Rob, I'm proud of you for playing with Alexa and Almira, our two kids, earlier on today, and being completely present with them, right? It might be that. And I go on 7 times. Then the next thing I do is say, Rob, I forgive you for. Right? I forgive you for. And then I explain maybe the things I forgive myself for. And that might be, guilt. It might be something I did yesterday. It might be not being my word on something that I did. And then the third and final one is, Rob, I commit to you that. And then this now is a declaration of what I commit to myself. Right? So that could be, Rob, I commit to you that today, you are going to be as present as you can be for 100% of the time with everything that you're doing, right? So it's a declaration, it's a commitment, right? And I say that 7 times. So very powerful because it works on so many different levels, right? And what I really want to hear from you in a second is this concept of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and so on. And maybe you can relate that to that of what it impacts and what it touches. But I think it's such a powerful, not even technique, such a powerful habit to get into, because that thing about forgiveness, like there's so many things that I've done in my life that I wasn't proud of. So many things I was guilty of when I was growing up. Because I did things, like I said, I didn't get caught by the police, right? But I did plenty of things. But you should have. I know, man.
And you know it.
I know. There were so many things. I'm not going to talk about them now, maybe tomorrow, all right? But so many things. So I came around this guilt, right? But that ability to be able to forgive yourself, I found to be of paramount importance to get anywhere near self-love, right? And the other one was about empathy. And I was an introverted extrovert, right? Still am. And the introvert was a meditation, the extrovert was the actor, right? And again, that ability to be able to look at somebody, ask them 2 or 3 questions, someone you don't like, someone who rubs you up the wrong way, and you have this understanding that if I ask them 3 questions, where are they from? What was their life like? How do they feel about that? Maybe those 3 questions, right? I get to the heart of who they were from 0 to 7, maybe these formative years of who we become. And this was how I defeated racism. Because I was like yourself, and I know you were, man, victim of racism, or not victim, but I was at the result of racism on my person, right?
You're a survivor of racism.
Survivor, thank you, brother, respect. And part of the reason I was able to do that was because I was able to do that exercise on someone who hurt me so much, physically, emotionally, mentally, and I really got that they didn't know any other way, because as human beings, we do the best we can with what we have at our disposal at any one point in time. So we do the best we can with what we know, or what we think we know, or who we think we are. And this guy was brought up as a racist, saw brown people, as Aaron said, saw brown people in a certain way, a certain light, and was just following it on unconsciously, right? So when I got to grip with that, then I was able to forgive him for his actions. Not said I didn't like it, but I was able to forgive him. And the minute I was able to forgive him, empathy, I haven't felt racism for 20 years, right? I haven't felt, does it exist? Yes, it does. But have I experienced it? No, because it doesn't stick. There's no hook. Someone can call me nigger, black cunt, whatever, but it doesn't stick. Brown, those words, add brown first, right? But it doesn't stick because there's no hook for it to sit in. So those 2 things of being able to forgive myself for things that I've done that I wasn't proud of, and being able to have empathy for others, were 2 of the strongest components of giving me or showing me the way towards love. Mm-hmm. So what comes up for you, brother, when I say those things?
Man, so much. But to be honest, I was just doing my best to keep myself present because I don't like to think about what I'm going to say before I do. And it's like, I look like a thinker because of the shape of my head or something, like the shaved head and all of like that. People see Professor X. Yeah, and so people assume that I'm thinking a lot. Most of the time I'm not. I'll just be spontaneous, and I like that.
Love it.
And
Love
there's even something I teach that's relational presence, which is the art of just using someone and their words as an object of meditation. So where you talk, I'm doing my best not to let my mind wander, and I'm just entirely present and focused on you. So what comes up when you talk about forgiveness? Well, there was something you touched on there. I feel like, what is it more than just the ability to accept what you are, which is what we were talking about before, right? Because there might be these pieces of myself that I don't like, but if I accept them, then they're a reality. That's it, it's a reality, it's just there. So it becomes equal as the things that I do like, because they're all just part of reality. And it's the same with a racist human being. If you look at them, it's like, if I see all of you, I see a human being. I don't see a racist person. That's just one piece of the puzzle, right? And you watch you watch Kung Fu when you were younger? You know, Kane from Kung Fu, right? Old school. And shame Bruce Lee got cheated out of that role, but David Carradine still did pretty good, you know? But Bruce, if you're watching this from heaven, I love you, probably more than any human being. But there was one episode, I don't know if you remember it, where Kane meets this gunfighter, and he was a bad motherfucker. You know, he's a great gunfighter. And he said, what made me good is that when I was there in a showdown and I see another human being, I don't see them as a human being. I see them as an enemy and a target. And that's what I see when I look. And this whole episode was about him becoming gun shy. And Kane's like, what happened? He's like, I stopped seeing an enemy and a target and I started seeing a human. And so I think we're all just, we can be in the habit of slinging mud and projections onto others, but then if we see them as humans, it's like that just stops. And it's like, you're just a human, I'm just a human, we've got all these things in us. It might not be positive or negative, however you want to frame it, but that's just the reality. And once we are willing to see that reality, then I feel forgiveness, empathy just come on their own. You know?
So where, without even practicing or whatever, like where I feel this road is taking us, right, is on some of the incredible abilities of meditation, right, to bring all these different pieces together into a whole, right? Do you care to comment on what that?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly how it is. You know, it's funny. You ever read the I Ching?
Yes.
Yeah, I Ching's one of like my guiding books. I've been reading it for more than half my life now, and it actually got my brother into reading. My brother's dyslexic, but he loves a lot of the same stuff we do. You know, he loves the martial arts, he loves the Oriental philosophy. We're always training when we're kids to be Shaolin monks and all this stuff. But he wasn't reading when we were younger, and then when he was like 19 or 20, I bought him a copy of the I Ching because he had so much respect for it. He learned to read. It's not an easy book to read. That was the Wilhelm Baines version, translated by Richard Wilhelm, so it's proper academic, you know. And what that makes me think of is one of the figures of the I Ching, which is the army. And the idea is that the army is either a powerful thing or it's a chaotic thing. It's powerful if it's unified and it's working together, and it's not powerful if it isn't. And so it's the same as a family, it's a unified force. And I feel we're like that. We're an army, and we are in the blessed position of being the general of the army, and we can choose to unify our forces, or we can choose to let them be scattered. And that army is going to rampage and pillage and destroy the world, if we don't do anything with it. But if we do unify it, it can be a force for the good. And you have to organize and work towards harmony. I don't know if I answered your question there, but that's what I was thinking.
But here's the thing though, right? Even though it's a Q&A, sort of, it's not about answering a question, it's about what triggers, because the energy takes care of everything else, right? What comes up is supposed to. So it's never about answering a question, but I appreciate you trying. Here's the thing. So there's a guy called Dandapani, right? And a monk, and I love his work, and he's got this incredible, I liked his word incredible a lot, as you can hear, but this incredible way to describe the mind and awareness, which some of you may or may not have heard, but I want to take a few minutes to explain it to you because it's so powerful, and that will lead us right onto somewhere else, which is going to be great. So the mind and awareness. So what happens is that, so the mind is like a map, right? So imagine a map, and in this map, you've got different destinations, you know, which are our emotions. Might be love, joy, hatred, anger, fear, loathing, jealousy, awareness itself, right? So this is a map of the mind. Now, awareness is like a ball of light that travels around the mind at will. Now, what happens is that wherever this ball of light stops, that area illuminates, lights up, and then you begin to feel and attract the experiences that relate to where you've stopped. So for example, if you stop on love, so your focus and attention is on love, then you're drawing more of those experiences into your awareness, into your life. If you stop on hate, then this is where you're focusing on, and that area of the brain, the hate area of the brain, lights up, and you start to experience more of that. So awareness and the mind is simply about where you choose to put that ball of light that determines the results that you get, which I thought, or the outcomes, which I thought, when I first heard it, was like, boom! It just like blew my mind, right, literally. And to me, that's a really powerful way to perhaps describe meditation.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dan DePani. It's a beautiful description, right? That is what in the Toltec shamanic tradition is called the assemblage point, the secret of the assemblage point. And it's exactly that we are not a body, we are not a mind, we are a collection of awareness that sits behind your right shoulder, just outside the body. And as we move that through the body, it lights up and collects, because it has a force of gravity, fibers of light and fires them up. And that chooses the world that we live in. And what Don Juan says is that the greatest magical act that humans ever did was creating this world. This world is an act of magic, because when you look at that table, you see it, and I see it.
Yeah.
Whereas if our assemblage points were in a slightly different position from each other, we both wouldn't see it. You'd see something else, I'd see something else. And so in the Toltec shamanic tradition, what they say is that we are the ones who create this world through training babies to become humans. Because a baby could become something else. Its assemblage point could morph into something else. Anyone who spent time around kids and babies knows that they are seeing a lot of other things besides what we expect they're seeing at first. And then we entrain them into seeing table, glass, rob, saber-tooth tiger right behind you. We entrain them to see these facets of our universe, and then they're living in the same universe because their assemblage point is grabbing onto the same fibers.
And look, for people here, so maybe some people watching, maybe they've thought about meditation, maybe they've tried it and it didn't work. Or it didn't work, I can't meditate.
Give it a slap, like the
give
TV.
it a little slap and a tickle, and it will come good. It will come good, right? I saw a few guys there going like, yeah, where do I slap and tickle? I've been trying to slap and tickle for like the last 5 years. Hasn't worked. Right, so maybe if you're a beginner or you're a person who's new to meditation, because I feel like we've all been meditating, right? We've all had our awareness on doing that one thing for an extended period of time, right? So we've all actually done it, right? It's just that we don't label it like that. But maybe in your own words, like how would you describe meditation? And to those people who are maybe wondering, like how do I do it? I'm just becoming aware of this, how would you or what would you advise them to do? And you can make it practical if you want as well.
Well, I think that my description of meditation is entirely in line with what you just said and Dan DePani just said. Dan DePani wears a figure from the I Ching on his forehead. So he wears the creative, right? Like 3 lines. And meditation is just an exploration of the self. Well, first off, we've got to qualify it. What are we talking about when we talk about meditation? For the rest of this interview, when I talk about meditation, I'm talking about Vipassana meditation. And I feel like for me, it's the crowning jewel of meditation because it's the one that connects all the others together. Because all meditation is, as I described this the other day with Brian Kelly on a workshop we were doing, is the user manual to the self. We've been given this beautiful, complex machinery, and no one told us how to use it. It's just like, go for it, run with it, Rob. Like we all do when we're kids, we want to open the box and take the machine out. And we don't want to read the manual. No one wants to read the manual. But the user manual to this thing is amazing. And if we start reading the manual and figuring out what it can do, then we're using it for what it's meant for. Like if you look at these little supercomputers everyone's carrying around, imagine if we went back 100 years and we gave people an iPhone. They'd probably use it as like a weak form of a mirror. Or they might use it as like a doorstop or a paperweight or something like that, because they got no idea and no frame for how to understand what this thing is capable for. I think that's exactly the same with us. And what Vipassana is for me is, it's the real yes to life. It's the real key to adventure. Because again, in shamanic traditions, and I think all these traditions are the same, right? So whichever one we quote from, it goes to the same thing. There are two infinities. There's the infinity without, and there's the infinity within. And the thing is, if you only ever explore the infinity without, then you can't get to infinity, because you carry your perception of where you are within with you. So it's always a mirror. Whereas if you explore the infinity within, then it means that it takes away your filters for the way you see the infinity without. And so you can truly go on a journey. And Vipassana does it in the most simple way, because what it does is it gives you the ability to start to perceive what you actually are. And you were saying, this is something we've been touching on with all the things we've been talking about, right? Empathy, forgiveness, love. It's just accurately perceiving. If I see somebody suffering, if I see a child starving on the side of the road, how can I not feel love for them and want to help them? Right? These are just natural, organic emotions. If I'm working, then that's the emotion that comes out, right? So I think all we need to do really is explore the mechanism, and it all comes alive. And what Vipassana does is gives us the simplest, best way to be able to do that. And I don't say that because I'm attached to any one tradition or other. In fact, the very opposite. I like to break traditions and give people the skill on its own. That's exactly what Yogi Lab is about. But it's that from deep suffering when I was 14 and I started to wake up to 23, so 9 years, I tried a lot of things. And I used a lot of things, and I love them all, and they're wonderful. I did Zen meditation, Qigong, shadow work, Gestalt therapy, psychoanalysis, you know, like name it, and I've done a bit of it. Tantric yoga, I did all this stuff. But then when I found Vipassana, it's like, this is the thing, this is the bit of gold that I found in all these other traditions that just ties it all together. It's somebody actually saw something that worked and understood it to a level where they could explain it to other people. To me, that's why the Buddha's amazing. I don't care if he could fly or if he could do all the magical stuff that was described. Probably could, because I've seen some amazing things on this path of meditation. But what I care about is that he saw reality so clearly that he could explain to all of us how to get there. And once I started using it, it was like, oh, before this, I've just been rubbing sticks together to try and make fire like a caveman. And now the Buddha's given me like a brand new combi oven, so I can just cook like that. And that's what Vipassana is to me. It's just a gift to the universe. That's why we were saying before about the meditation. Yeah, Yogi Lab sells things and makes money, but the main thing we do is we give away Vipassana, because that is the key to me to solving all the problems I faced in life. And I would never dream of withholding that from someone because they weren't in a bracket of wealth that was able to afford it. So I think of me 21 years ago, sitting there in pain in my house and finally coming to the realization that that pain was because of me, and being hungry for a tool that worked. And so we do this now to be able to give people like that this tool so it works.
And that pain, right, at 21, for what comes up?
14.
14, sorry, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit, it sounds like it was powerful, brother.
Well, it was just the weight of that shadow on me, right?
Yeah.
And I started to feel it and realize it was on me. You know, it wasn't something else. That's me I'm feeling. And it was just this one day, and I can see it vividly now when we start to talk about it. And I was just going to my door to leave my house one morning, and I was the last one in the house to go to school. And back then I was a bad kid, right? I had like 30% attendance, and when I was there, I was in a room alone most of the time because I did some bad things to make the teachers cry, and so I got kicked out of most of my classes, and I'm sitting in this room alone. Every now and then a teacher will come and walk in and make sure I'm not doing something terrible, and they were all surprised because they come in and they find me sitting there reading the Bible or reading Dostoevsky or something like that, and they'd be like, "You're the one who's tearing down the school?" Anyway, I was involved in some pretty bad things like you probably were back in the day, and I count myself lucky that I never went too far, because I was thinking my mind was occupied a lot with revenge back then. I was keeping this cycle of violence going in my life, and one of the things I count myself lucky for is that I never killed anyone, because I feel like it's like a line, you know. And I was such an angry kid. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but like I was so angry, and more than angry, I was justified in being angry. There were people who had done bad things to me, bad things to my family, and it was like that situation where, how far am I going to let this go type thing. So that day when I was about to leave, I was faced with that, and I realized there's nothing waiting for me in this day that I'm going to look forward to when I was about to leave the door. And then I realized, oh no, there's nothing waiting for me in my life that I can look forward to. Because because I'm going to go home. I mean, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to face violence. I'm going to fight multiple times today. It's not an if, it's a when. I'm going to face hate and anger, and I'm going to be in this state, this antagonistic state the whole time. And I'm going to come back home, and it's going to be terrible here too. Because we were just like a pack of wild animals back then, just scratching at each other's pain, right? And I just felt this weight, this shadow just hanging on me, and it just pulled me down to the ground of my living room floor, and I just lay there, and I felt like I just died a death. And something in me let go. And in that moment, I realized all those things that I think are waiting for me are only waiting because I've made choices that have led to those outcomes. Like, what's one of my options right here now laying on this ground? I could continue to lie here and I never have to face them, which means that the other thing's a choice too. I can choose to pick myself up, but then where I go from when I pick myself up is my choice. So why am I blaming these people I'm fighting against, who are also just kids, also just raised in a violent environment, also just trying to look like a bad man, you know, to be able to defend themselves and be who they need to be? Why am I blaming my mother, who's going through all this pain to keep us alive, and I'm here blaming her because she hasn't been able to raise us right? My brothers and sisters, who again are just wounded animals in trauma and not knowing how to do anything with it. Why am I blaming God? Hasn't he given me the power for me to be able to be who I need to be? And that's the power I'm realizing I have right now when I'm laying there on the floor. And so at that moment, I was a little bit like Tony Montana. I realized I was the bad guy. That all these people that I was blaming, the government, or whatever, they weren't to blame. I was to blame because I have the power of choice. And I had been exercising that power of choice. I just hadn't realized it. And at that, so maybe I'm not to blame before that, right? Because I don't know I have that power. But then after that moment I realized it, I never blamed another human being. Because I realized, no, it's my choice what I get myself into. Because even if someone is bringing violence towards me, then I have to go the other 50% of the way to meet them. Right? I'm a participant in this, and I'm a willing participant in whatever they're bringing towards me. Whereas I can choose not to do that. So that's when I started to realize what I'm experiencing right now are the ingredients of my life that I have thrown in to make this dish. And from this day forward, I might not know what can make a delicious dish, but I can change the ingredients and start experimenting. So then, you know, like the Yogi Lab logo is like the yogi inside the conical flask. That's because we're all our own experiment. Like, this is a Yogi Lab, right? And that's the day when that started when I was 14, when I realized I don't know what right is, but I know a few options of what wrong is. So let me cross that shit off the list and not do that anymore and try something else. So I started trying something else.
Man, so many parallels, brother. So many parallels.
It's the abstract cause, you know?
Yeah. Wow. So now, for those people here who maybe want to start this journey or continue this journey, I love the death, actually, the death of the ego. Anyway, whew. So for those people who want to start this journey, how do they reach out to you, to Yogi Lab? Where do they go?
We got a free meditation course that runs every month. It's happening right now. Right now is day 4 of the February meditation course. It runs from the 11th to the 22nd, and they can learn the technique we've been talking about, Vipassana meditation, which I teach in my own imperfect way. But in a way, I feel that's good, because if you have some perfect shining model of the technique up there that was raised and born into it, then you can think, oh, I can't get to those heights of meditation. This person is like prophesied to be this great, right? Whereas me, I come from the poverty line, an abusive family, and I'm clearly still imperfect now, but I can tell you right now that technique worked. And that technique is the reason why I'm alive here today, and it's the reason why I've experienced so much love I have in my life, and it's the reason why I made those 8 figures that you were talking about before. Because without it, I definitely would not have had that success or that response from the world. So to me, it's not about the human being, it's about the technique. And if you use it, it can do wonderful things for you. And more than anything else, it can make you more yourself, because it takes you on that journey into yourself. So they just need to go to vipassanaonline.com, VIPASSANA online.com, and then they can sign up to the free course, and then they've got magic, and they can choose to do with it what they will.
Love it. And so in a minute, guys, the audience, you're going to have a chance to ask a couple of questions, right? So we'll have a mic, one of these ones, and when you get the mic, just make sure you turn this towards your mouth. I know it sounds so obvious, but every week someone doesn't do it and we can't hear the question. So just remember that. Just put your hand up and we'll come and grab you in a second. Before we get there, so, you know, this thing about contribution, my brother, right? Thank you.
Been a pleasure.
My man. Whoa. So this thing about contribution, right? You're contributing to the lives of many, right? And I know that, you're doing 15,000, like thousands and thousands of downloads, right? Of people joining the meditation and doing it. And I love the way you give it for free. I love that. So, how can people contribute to you or contribute to Yogi Lab? What comes up, or contribute to themselves, right? I mean, but to you, I'd like to know, it's not from a needy place, it's from a place of accepting love, yeah?
Number one is just use the meditation. It works, it produces magic, and it solves problems. My family was still living in poverty when I came back from living like a monk, and they were in pain. When I came back to London after I'd learned this technique, my mother not only had cancer, and they didn't want to tell me while I was abroad, but she'd just been robbed by a young thug. This soft 5'0" woman, I came back to her in a hospital bed with her jaw swollen up, trying to put a brave face on the situation, which made it even more tragic. And she'd had her jaw broken by this stupid young thug. And he went to prison and committed suicide, for those of you who want to know the close of that story. Rest in peace. But then from there, I realized that I could take everything I learned in the spiritual world and apply it to the physical. And now my mother lives in her dream house because of this technique. And so the number one thing is take the technique and use it. It is gold, it is magic. Well, I was going to start teaching it online this year. I've been intending to do it for a long time because I've been teaching for the last 13 years in physical person, but I didn't want to start teaching it online. I'm one of those OCD people that I just like to have everything in order before I start doing something. But then last year when the virus hit, there was something in particular that happened that made us want to start doing it this year. And that's because they started closing down all the free meditation centers around the world. The Goenka centers that he built, the dharma.org centers, for those of you who want to find them, they started closing them all down. And there was this thing that this guy, Dana, this young Australian guy I used to volunteer with in the New Zealand center when I started to learn, he said, I wonder if all these realizations people are having around the world are because of these waves of love that we're sending out in these centers. Because on day 10, everyone's just full of so much love and they're sending it out, and it must just be doing something, right? And you can see the power of it, because we all see the power of love in our own lives, so imagine that collective love. And I started thinking, what if this virus and the way people have responded to it has stopped so many people meditating that these shock waves of love aren't going around the world anymore? And I was like, well, it must be time to start making this accessible to people. Because one of the things that we're into in general, and I'm into in my life, is the decentralization of power. And the two main companies I focus on, out of the ones that I'm involved in, are Yogi Lab and Guide Education. And they're both exactly the same thing. Yogi Lab is about giving people meditation for free, giving everyone the ability to learn meditation. So let's say the democratization of meditation, making it available to someone regardless of what they believe in, and regardless of their bracket of wealth or where they are in the world, if they have access to the internet. And Guide Education is a company I started with another English London boy, an Egyptian one. And he also raised in an abusive family, became the youngest headmaster in the UK. Then he wrote novels and TV scripts for Arabic TV stations. And then we started Guide Education together to be able to bring high quality education to everyone in the world. So the same thing as Yogi Lab, but with mainstream education. So now we've had millions of users from that business working on the governmental and county level. And it takes like a San Francisco level education and can take it to Somalia. And so to do that, to spread it around the world. So that's the aim of that, because education helped us too, But with the meditation, if you use it, then the limits are, they're limitless. You can do whatever you want with it. So number one, I would just say that's the most important thing, because I've been given this gift and I feel an obligation to share it with others. So the best thing we can do, I think, is just keep that rolling. Don't let it be about one organization. It's not about Yogi Lab. It's not about Goenka, who did it before us. It's not about Sayagyi Uberkin, who did it before him. Because what you slowly see is you see this decentralization happening naturally, like an organic process. It started with one human being, right? The Buddha. And then there's a few people who followed him. But if you weren't in northern India or Nepal 2,600 years ago, you weren't learning this. And then it went to other people. They started to make nunneries and monasteries and spread it around to different places. But still, you had to be part of a closed faith following specific rules to gain access to this gold. And then a very brave priest and monk called Ledi Sayadaw in Burma decided to start teaching lay people. And he taught Sayagyi Uberkin, who was a wonderful human being. Sayagyi, rest in peace. I love you. You listen to this guy talk, just such a beautiful, powerful Burmese man, like a big baby. And he was a government official. So he started teaching the other people that worked with him. And he got to the point where he could manage 4 different governmental departments at the same time, when Burma was at the height of corruption. And wherever he went, he would take away the corruption. And that's the power of it. So he'd get people to meditate with him, and then he started to get famous dignitaries coming and practicing with him as well. A rich businessman who studied under him, S.N. Goenka, took it back to India, and he started to make his own centers. And so then it got decentralized even further, because he made hundreds of centers around the world teaching it to people. Whereas now, we can put it online, and everyone can learn it. You don't have to go to a center. So to me, this is like an organic process of growth that the universe wants to happen. You just empower it. So number one, we can all be these practice hubs of meditation. We can all be these generators of love and power, so that there's not a few people sitting around who think they have the power. We all have the power. We're all little He-Mans and She-Ras, right? Waiting to magically transform. Number two, if they want to help us with our mission, they can donate. And they can be 100% sure that we're going to put all of that money back into spreading the technique. Simple as that. Go to YogiLab.com. And I don't know if we've got an avenue for people to donate there. They should ask Sash, but we got it somewhere. But yeah, those are the ways. But number one is by far the most important. I said take the technique and use it and put it out there however you want to, because the more people that have it, the more people can produce these results in their lives.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So guys, we've got questions coming up very soon. Promise this is the last one. I know, man. We just keep going, man. I could go.
I'm all right to talk, brother. I'm just checking.
I love it. Love it. So I don't really want to use this word, but it's coming in, so I'm going to use it, right? And whatever comes, comes. But are you proud of what you've done?
In the sense that you were asking those questions before with the Harvard power stance, yes. Like when I look at it like that, I can say, yeah, I'm proud of you for doing this and making through it. But me, the person now, no. You can say I'm proud of the boy. Right? I can look at the boy and say, well done. You know, especially for getting the house to the mom and living the ghetto dream, you know, all that kind of stuff. But because she deserved that. But as a man, no, because I know what I could be doing. And I feel like we have such low expectations of our ability and what we can do. And if I'm being asked honestly, am I doing 100% what I can do to be able to get this technique out there? Or even more importantly, am I doing 100% of what I could do to fight against this suffering in the world and to promote healing and health? You know, right now, there are kids getting trafficked all around the world and abused, and there is this darkness. And like you said, the darkness doesn't touch my life anymore. Yippee, I'm out of the darkness. But what about those kids? You know what I mean? And so I feel like we got to do something about that. And like I'm one step away, my family and brothers and sisters are one step away from being those kids who were trafficked, who were left behind in a cult and shipped around the world. And so when I see the world, including myself, turning a blind eye to this, I cannot be proud of myself. And I think until the day I die, I'm going to live with that unless I do something about it. And one of the reasons I turned my back on the world when I was younger and I went towards monasticism is I didn't think I could do anything. Now I don't live under that illusion. I know I can do something. And so it's just whether I actually put this machinery to use to make it happen. Because now I'm pretty happy with my life, right? Everything's good, wonderful. I'm a simple human being. I read, I write, I meditate, I work, I exercise, I see my friends, and that's my life. So I don't need the money. You know, I could live on minimum wage and live the same life. I'm easy to please. So for me, from now until the grave is about that impact. What can I do to genuinely be able to stop these atrocities and to be able to spread light and power in the world?
Mamma mia. So we're going to take some questions now. For those of you watching at home, we'll still keep the cameras rolling for a little while. But here's the thing, right? So next week we have Aaron, another Yogi Labber. I love it. My brown brother from another mother, and lots of tats.
Beautiful human being.
But an incredible human being. And he's got a great story to share. So, but here's the thing. So you've heard and you continue to hear and be impacted by some amazing frequency of energy and love and insights and breakthroughs and challenges. And it's because we really love to talk about not what a person's done, but who they are. And that's the key, right? So if you come in a studio audience, like there's quite a few people here today, and that's to me where another juice point is, because it's about connecting as human beings and just spreading that light together. I'm sure there's better words I could use, but they're the ones who came. So if you do have the chance to come on a Monday to Tropical Nomad, 6:30, come a bit earlier, have some food and stuff, do it. If you feel pulled to come, do it, because there's people here that will, my understanding is, will lead you to the next step that you need to make. Yeah, that's what comes in. So please come, all right? Please
and
come.
And because you're here, brother.
Thank you, man.
You're creating, you're giving us an invitation that we just have to say yes to.
Thank you, my brother. Ooh. So now, questions, put your hand up. We'll get a mic to you. That one is coming. Remember, if you want to be in the same spot as this beautiful man, I know there's people here in the audience and those people watching from home, just reach out to me, right? Because if you're feeling the pull to do it, that's all I need to hear. It's not about what you've done or who you are. It's about who you are. But if you feel pulled to do it, that's the selection process. So just put your hand up, reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, in person. We have a WhatsApp group as well that gives you a little bulletin on what's happening. So just come and see me or send me a message and I can include you in that. Now, questions? Any questions? Yeah, one hand. You got it ready? Beautiful.
Yeah. So first off, thank you both. I'm feeling extremely inspired right now. It's really wonderful. I need to get this closer. My name's Joy. Let's say my full-time profession is to solve plastic pollution in Indonesia. I have a team of 40, and I see as sort of a secondary job just as important as really building the environmental leaders of the future. On my team, I'm seeing, not with everyone, but something that's very common is let's say a lower sense of self-belief in what people can actually accomplish, right? And I think one of the fundamental traits of a leader is just extreme self-belief, because then you can do things that are bold and powerful. And I'm wondering, from a professional context, because these are not friends, these are people that I work with. How can I help them build their self-esteem to become, what I know that they're capable of?
Great question. I feel there are stages in which we grow, whoever we are, and we might skip some of them, but later we're going to find shaky foundations if we don't go through it. And I feel the first one is just accepting responsibility. To me, like on that day when I was 14, the thing I remember, I cannot forget it, because I know exactly how it changed my life, and I can see it when I go back. And if you want to take away the fluffy story and you got the real thing there, the real thing is I took responsibility for my life. I realized, and you know what I did right after I got up off the floor? I didn't go back to school. I got up, and I'm one of those clean freaks, right? I'm working on it. I'm a little bit dirtier now than I used to be, but yeah.
Always looks so smooth, man. Sorry, I have to say that, but I get it.
But when I was a kid then, one of the reasons why I hated living in the house with my family is that they were quite messy, and I wouldn't clean up, because I'd be like, yo, this is your mess. It's not my mess. I'd categorize it like that. And so when I picked myself up off the floor, I just looked around the house and I was like, how can I expect anyone in the world to clean something up if I'm not willing to clean it up? Because I'm expecting them to do something that I'm not. So the first thing I would promote is just cleaning up the mess, taking responsibility for cleaning up the mess. And that starts with our own mess. So I went to the sink and I just cleaned up this pile of dishes and I cleaned the house. And then I can't remember what I did after that. I left and my life changed. I rode off into the sunset. But how can someone take responsibility for themselves? I think that the shadow work that you were talking about is just so important. It's being willing to look at all the pieces of ourselves that we think are ugly, and to realize that we are a microcosm of the greater problem that we want to solve. You want to clean up the world, you want to clean up all of that. It's a beautiful aim. And what I like to think is, like, George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump are not responsible for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. I'm responsible for them. So I feel like if I start to project blame onto anyone else over something that's going on, I'm taking a step away from reality. And to start looking at global events as our responsibility. And it's just like in an organization, as I'm sure you realize with all of this, that the person who takes on more responsibility ends up being the more developed individual, and they rise through the organization, they make more money. Whereas the person who's looking for the profit from the get-go but not willing to take on responsibility never gets there. And so to me, I would just promote this act of taking responsibility in every area of life. And either they're going to buckle under the pressure or they're going to grow into something amazing.
And what great answer, Mamma Mia. The other thing as well, which is dealing with not the symptoms, dealing with the end result. So it's not dealing with the cause. So one, we had on the show a guy called Janur, who started the plastic exchange in Bali. So here's one guy I'm happy to connect you to if you're not connected already. Incredible, beautiful human being, right? He's one guy who's definitely out there doing things. And it was his birthday at the weekend, and met some of the most fired up, inspirational people. And that thing about people inspire people, when you're around people like that, it just rubs off. You're just like, oh, these guys are so inspired. I feel good around these guys. Let's do something. So there's that feeling. And what I always feel as well, which I wanted to mention earlier on, about there are so many documented cases of when group meditation happens together in areas which are going through enormous turmoil and enormous challenges and problems, a healing takes place.
You were talking about what is known as the Maharishi effect.
That's him.
Which actually I should have mentioned much earlier in this, because it's the main thing that we do. Is coined by Mahesh Maharishi Yogi, who said that he proposed that if 1% of a population meditates, then harmony is produced in the environment. But then later they started to identify other effects. And the most interesting version of that to me is the one in Mozambique, where Joaquim Cruzano, who was the then president, prime minister, whatever you have in Mozambique, was a meditator. So he started introducing it, but there weren't enough people meditating in Mozambique to get to 1%. So he got his young recruits, the soldiers, to learn to meditate. It was a thing, you have to learn to meditate. When they got to 1%, the country's GDP jumped from a predicted 6% to 19%. So not only did it start to heal the violence, it started to up the productivity as well. So sorry to jump in there. I just wanted to throw it.
Mate, remember, it's not about the question, it's about what comes and what's triggered, and you did love it.
And 1% of the global population right now is 78 million people.
Yeah.
So we've got this mission to get to 80 million. So if all of us starts to help to spread it and connect it, we can get to 1% of the globe. That's enough to shift the balance.
Wow, Maharishi effect. Thank you, my brother. So that's two, and the other one is that there's so Ichi over here, who's one of the owners of Tropical Nomad. My brother from a different mother as well, twin brothers. Company Nomad Essentials. So look out for Nomad Essentials. You got Kadar, you got Ichi. Full disclosure, I'm involved as well. That's another company which is actually dealing with the upstream challenge of plastic and naturalness, giving back to the planet. And obviously last week we had Reiki from Seeds, Haifa Seeds, which is a huge player in that world of that civilization of regenerative practices for the planet, and incentivizing people to actually do that. Full disclosure, involved in that one too, but I love this stuff. But there's so many incredible people here. Also, Ronnie was on a few weeks prior to that. Another one involved with Seeds. Okay, so there's some people I'd love to connect you to if you're not connected already. And this Maharishi effect will have the full scope to kind of play itself out and to keep you motivated, because the challenge with some of these things is that this concept of a cup and a saucer, and when you put liquid inside and you're filling up your cup, is like you filling up you. And like it's this understanding of you give from the overflow. So if I pour water into a cup, it flows over the cup lip and into the saucer. And the idea is I give from the saucer, not from the cup. So I remain full and open and giving and in an incredible space, but I give from that. And when you're doing some of these incredible things for the planet, it's easy as well for your staff to start to, there's no overflow, and they're giving giving from their cup, which means they're getting tired. And the tiredness then starts to have a longer effect that depletes your resources and your energy and your drive and all of those great things that we love. So yeah, being around people like this can also help inspire you and to keep you grounded and to keep you in practice of doing, regenerative practices for yourself to keep your cup full. Yeah, so thank you so much for the question, Ani.
I needed to hear that.
Oh, super welcome. It makes me happy to hear that. Thank you. Appreciate it. So any more questions? So the mic will work its way to you, and we'll just take a couple more questions, and then we'll call it, because I know I can talk forever with this guy. Far out.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Thank you, guys.
I love it.
Dave, my question for you is about coming to Bali. You essentially came from the other side of the world. And I heard in an interview that you were about to close on a Chiang Mai property, but then you chose the space for Istana. What's your relationship to serendipity, manifesting, and making good things happen?
Yeah, good question, and well remembered. I was 10 minutes away from signing on a piece of land in Chiang Mai before this year was that close. I feel like there's a flow of things that want to happen and come into the world, and if we learn to listen closely enough, we can hear them. And so when I go deep into my meditation, once I get past my own nonsense, and once I get past my own fantasies of what I want to happen, there are these threads of things that want to happen, and that's where we can start to become facilitators for reality growing into what it wants to be, as opposed to just fantasizers. And being a fantasizer can be fun, but after a while you start to realize that you played out a little bit, once you start to do this. And there's much more joy in being part of being a collaborator with reality into bringing things through that want to come through. And the history of the Istana is that same brother, Maxim Lewis, who I connected with when I was 17, who was like a dear friend to me, we used to talk a lot about this dream of creating a center where we could bring people together. Whereas it wasn't so much about having a teacher and a student, it was about having a collective meeting place where developed people can connect. And obviously a teaching, an event can be the trigger for that, but it's just about having people in one place to be able to generate this love and this energy. And I saw it so much in my mind, I knew how it looked. So then when I walked on the land, the Istana's land, and I walked around the cliff face, it's like, yo, this is the place. I was going to make it happen in Chiang Mai, but it wanted to happen in Bali. So I just had a choice. Do I want to make it happen, or do I want to let it happen? And so to me, I leant towards letting it happen, because I feel like that's the more powerful position. Like that movie about Bob Dylan, I'm Not There. And if anyone's seen it, they know that what it does is it does something wonderful. It takes a bunch of different actors, and even an actress, Cate Blanchett, who plays Bob Dylan in different phases of his life, to not show it chronologically, but to show a slice of his character through a different actor. And I feel like the idea is that he's not there in any of those. He's the energy behind it. He's this other indefinable thing that's behind it, and those are just facets of what he is. So I feel like the best I can be is not being here. Because if I'm not here, then I let all of this creativity come through and do itself. Whereas if I'm too much here, then I'm like a dirty filter for the world to express itself through. So that's how I think about a lot of things, and in particular creation and entrepreneurship and stuff like the Istana.
Great question, mate. Thank you. This, you just reminded me of something actually. This word, allow. Right? This word allow, and I think it's such a powerfully underrated word. And I'm curious to get your, that word allow, what does it mean to you?
Man, if I tell this story, we're going to be here too long. And these people sitting here are hot and bored right now, listening to two London boys talking. So I'm going to do this really quickly and not do justice to it, so forgive me if it's terrible. My father, my real father, I didn't meet until I was 32 years old. And I had a very strange 3 days with him and some of his other children, but I won't go into that. But then on the way back to the airport, our last time together, he told me a story, just out of nowhere. It wasn't connected to anything we were doing. And it's like he wanted to pass this to me. I could tell it's the thing he wanted me to have that he wasn't able to express. And it was his like defining moment. It's when he was 21, and he had this major psychedelic experience, nearly overdosing on LSD, and he got thrown in the back of an ambulance while he's traveling through Italy, and he was like an American hippie traveling through Italy, and he wakes up with this guy's hands around his throat, the paramedic, because back then there was a stigma about traveling hippies. This guy must have hated them. He was trying to kill my father. My father fought him off, jumped himself out of the back of the ambulance and worked his way back to the beach, and he felt on his way back to the beach this force tearing him up from the inside out. And he felt this struggle of him fighting against it. And he felt like he just had to get everything off him. So he ripped his clothes off, took them off, threw them into the beach. And he got down on his knees, and he realized he was starting to sob like a baby. And he never cried like that before. Maybe he had when he was actually a baby, but like not manly tears, like sobbing, breaking his body. And then he realized this force attempting to get out of him was love. And the only thing making it painful was the fact that he was resisting it and not allowing it to come out. And he felt like this is God. He felt like I'm hearing the voice of God right now. And he felt this force of love is this thing that we all have in us and running through us and connecting us. And the thing that causes the pain and the resistance is this block where we say no. So God must be an actor and a director too, right? And where we say no to improvisation, where we say no to allowing this love to flow through us. And so he went somewhere else, and he saw it even more clearly. He saw his life from the perspective of everyone else, not from his own perspective. And he saw how in every moment where he'd made things go wrong or caused pain, he'd been putting his ego in the way between the flow of that love and all the other people and himself in reality. And the bit that would make it too long is telling my side of the story, which is when I was 21, I had exactly the same experience. And it's what led me on my journey to find Vipassana. Except for I was in different environment, different situations, but the abstract core is the same. And the funny thing is, my dad's very different from me, but he described the story in the exact same words I described the story and the sequence. Not getting choked out by a paramedic, but you know, the bits that come after. And so to me, allowance is a real thing. Because there is this thing that wants to move through us. There is this love that wants to be expressed. And me not expressing it is simply not allowing me to be what I really am. Which at the core of it is a lover. Right?
So I'm going to ask Bella to capture this moment if you haven't already. And so guys, we're about to wrap it up soon. So what I want to do actually is that in about a minute or so, I'm going to ask you to close. And by close, what I mean is that if there's something that is wanting to come out that maybe you've said or haven't said, that will be the time, right, for you to let it out. And then after that, I'm going to give you a big hug, and we'll close. All right. So that's in about a minute's time, roughly a minute. It means longer than a minute, but you know that. So now for everybody else, so just remember this. I just want to thank everybody who's come, who's shown up live for this. Really trust that you've gotten some really great values, some great insights, something maybe of a reminder for you of something that you know that you should be doing, but maybe you're not doing it, but now you will. Right, or it might just be, you know, like I'm going to do that. I'm going to sign up to Vipassana as well.
My brother. There is nothing I wish to give to people more than that.
Yeah.
You know, if I had billions of dollars and I had the choice to give them to my future children, or the ability to truly practice Vipassana, I wouldn't think for a second about it.
Yeah. No, I'm going to log on. Come now. You've got me all. Well, like worked up, not worked up, but I feel like I want to do it. So we've got that as well. In the meantime, I just want to give really special thanks to Itchy and Bella and Guzman from here, Tropical Nomad. Like this wouldn't be possible, right? So I started this almost 2 years ago. So this is episode number 93. And so we started it at Life in Bali, which is in Tomorrow Gallery, which is not far from here. And it started off on a Monday because it was a response to people committing suicide on a Monday. Part of it was sharing what we felt was really important for the community to hear. right? And that was 92 weeks ago, right? When we haven't missed a beat. But here, the last 30 episodes have been shot here at Tropical Nomad, and it's such a different experience because it gives us a more powerful platform to release and to send these really powerful positive ripples into the universe for people to respond to and to feel, right? And I love that. So thank you, Itchy, Bella, Guzman, and everyone else here at Tropical Nomad. And finally, to you guys watching online, feel free to share this, guys, because at the end of the day, this is grassroots, what we're doing. All right? We're going to scale it later on in the year or something, make it into podcasts or parts of it. But at the moment, it's reliant upon people coming live to be part of this, but also to people seeing it online and sharing it. So that's Facebook Live, Instagram Live sometimes, and obviously YouTube as well, all right? So just thank you to all of you for being here. Remember, when you come in person, don't run off, guys. Like, connect with people here. Whether it's this beautiful man, whether it's some other of you beautiful souls, connect with one another. That's why you're actually here, to connect, right? So keep that in mind. Tropical Nomad is open 24 hours. For those of you who don't know, though, I'm not supposed to say that on camera. But it's not, but it is. But it's not, but it is, right? If you want to know more, just speak to the guys here. Great spot. Love that. How they're putting your foot in your mouth. Love it. So now I'm going to pass it over to my beautiful guest, my man. I'm so happy that. So this was Aaron, who's on next week. Aaron. I know. I like to call him Aaron. I don't know.
No, he hates it. Aaron Bayer.
Oh, do you really?
And pray love.
You know what? I'm going to call you Aaron from now on. No, Aaron. Okay, fine. Aaron. Love it. Aaron set this up, right? So all of these, if you want to be in this beautiful man's seat, just put your hand up. Or if there's somebody else who knows that someone else should do it, put your hand up for them. They've never said no, right? So please remember that as well, right? And next week, Aaron will be here, so feel free to come here at Tropical Nomad 6:30. My man.
Well, first off, I just want to say a big thank you to you, brother. Felt nothing but love and gratitude for you since the moment that we met each other up there. You know, and so thank you very much for inviting me here. I felt this was wonderful. There's a moment in one of my favorite movies, Waking Life, where these two characters choose to have a holy moment. They discuss what it means to create a holy moment. And it's just the two of them choosing to be more and more present in that moment. And you start to see through layers of reality as you do that. And I feel like we had that here. With all of you wonderful people, there's only really one thing I want to say, which is that I'm about meditation, which is very obvious, the way that I talk about all of this. But I feel like the most important thing isn't that. The most important thing is that we are all so powerful and capable, and that whatever it is that you want to bring into the world, you can do it. And I feel like I had just learned that. I wish I had learned that much earlier, because I did have more ability, and I did have years that I wasted and frittered away just not believing that I could produce any change. And then once I started doing it and I realized I could enact change, it's like, what's that? That's like a decade and a half I just wasted, where I could have been doing something that made a difference. And one of the things that brought me back from being like a monk, I discussed, it was my love for my family and my mother and wanting to provide for them physically, and that's an important one. But another thing was my dharma. And it doesn't need to be a fancy word if no one knows that. It was what I felt I was made to do, my purpose. And I felt this itching of my purpose inside of me. And I felt this thing, you're talking about being proud of yourself, right? This is the piece of me that isn't. Because I felt this piece of my internal Elvis, like Val Kilmer from True Romance, just talking to me and saying, Dave, you haven't done what you're meant to do. You know? You haven't become the person you're meant to become. You're a specific thing, and you can do it. When are you going to start, to use one of Aaron's lines, when are you going to start giving a fuck? And actually giving your best to the world. Because if I've been honest up until that point, I haven't given my best in a relationship. I haven't given my best to my family. I haven't given my best to the world or myself. And so the question was, when are you going to start doing that? And I feel like if we all did that, then the change we could produce is unimaginable. It's ridiculous. So if I'm going to finish this, that's what I like to finish it with. Let's do it, right?